area was being was developing in the 17th and 18th century. I'm sorry, in the 16th century. Settlements over there. So the walled city was where most of the Spaniards lived. But outside there were, at the start, 5 towns, surrounding suburbs, 5 towns or more arabales. You had, of course, Malate, this is here. Ermita, which is right next to us. And this used to be a town called Bagumbayan. Okay? So Bagumbayan, because they were protected by the Bayan. So it was a complete town with residential buildings, with the church, and the hospital. If you dig under the existing lagoon, you will find the foundations of the building that were built in the 16th century. So what happened when the British finally gave back Manila to the authorities, pinaklear yung area na to so that it would avoid
I-extend mo lang para lumuwag.
we have all of this empty area that was here from the 18th and 19th centuries and 20th centuries. So what happened after that in the 1800s is that this was an open area, and since it was open, and if you see a Ross Boulevard, that is the line of the sea. So there was no
Gusto ka, Claire? Gusto ka, hulog ka. Dalhin mo, Claire, pakidala. Patay mo na, patay mo na. Masahin yung battery.
Nakaano pa rin siya?
Dito ang pagpatay.
Dito.
Okay, everyone. Wow, dami. Dami niya. TikTok ba?
Yes, TikTok lang.
Sige mamaya, TikTok tayo.
Ting-ting daw.
Ayoko. Bilis, hindi kayo makakasama sa TikTok.
TikTok lang.
Okay, can everyone? Dito tayo, dito.
Here, over there, over there.
Yan ba yung limit? Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Anyway, at that corner, beyond the trees is the Baluarte de San Diego, where people would access the promenade through a crescent-shaped baluarte called the Media Luna. So that's what the French called the lunette. So that's the etymology or the origin of the word luneta. And then when they came down, and this was the beach, there was a hippodrome-shaped or flattened oval loop called a paseo. And this is where people would make paseo to enjoy the sunset and the fresh air. And that paseo, although it was named Paseo de Alfonso, yeah, okay na yun, diba? Thank you very much. So we stand at the southern end of that original loop, no? And in that loop, you could only go clockwise, while the Archbishop is the only one, and the Governor General could go counterclockwise in their carriages. So it was a place where people went to see and be seen and to enjoy the outdoors. So when Rizal Park was developed in the 1960s, after the MPDC set up, the people of Germany, the town of Wilhelmsville, where Rizal lived while a student of the University of Heidelberg, donated this fountain. So supposedly this is the same fountain that Rizal drink from. So one by one you can...
Parang sa Italy, may ganyan sa Italy, sa labas.
Here what the closet, here the fountain. So they brought this from Germany, and this became the landmark of this site. But 30 years before, 50 years before, this whole area, right after the Rizal Monument was built, became the site of an annual event, which is usually every January, February. About this time, the Manila would have a grand carnival, and that carnival lasted several weeks. That was yung pinakahintay na event in Manila. There was no shopping malls. There were no sports events. So the Manila Carnival was all of this area where you had pavilions from all over the country showing all of their products. There were pavilions from overseas. There were a lot of booths. There was the introduction of new technologies were through the Manila Carnival. Okay, so then we walk some more over here. Thank you very much. If you will notice that this area, which was redeveloped 10 years ago, has several relief maps. If you look over here, this is the relief map. This is the relief map of Germany. These are the places where Rizal visited. So you can learn your geography by looking at this map. Those are the places that Rizal visited. And over on the other side is a map of Laguna, where Rizal you can see where he would go from Manila to Bagumbayan.
Sweden.
So we'll walk to the edge of the noligarden. Please follow me.
Huwag mo na kaya i-ano to para mahawakan mo si Claire. Baka mamaya malingat sa akin. Iintindihin ko pa yan. Dito tayo maglakad.
Baka mas pambig ka.
Dito. Hiwalay tayo.
Sorry.
Mga estudyante pala yan, mga estudyante.
Valentine's na pala. Sige, yung mga mag-shota. kanta ni Rito. Boss, kantayin mo nga. Palakpakan natin! Thank you. Okay, anyway. So, in 1898, what happened? The Americans took over the Spanish, right? And so they found Manila medyo hindi nasa condition na maganda. So ang sabi nila, Manila had to level up. So what they did was to retain the services of a noted planner. Can anybody tell me the name to come and design Manila for them? Daniel Burnham, very good guess, but unfortunately, the first planner that they approached was not Daniel Burnham, but a fellow named Frederick Law Olmsted. So Frederick Law Olmsted was the designer of Central Park in the US, but he
Hindi
was
mo kinunan
also
yung
planning the city.
walking nilong kanina para may guide tayo. Hindi dito sa camera ko. Yung pupuntahan, hindi mo kinunan, no? Ha? Ayan, hindi magagamit. Ay, yung kay
So they sent somebody else, and that is Daniel Burnham. So Daniel Burnham came over in 1904 and saw that this was all empty. No? And the dimensions of this area, like I said, was yan ang trivia. What was the dimension? 450 meters or 500 meters wide and 1.2 kilometers. Just enough space to create the civic center or the national capital of the Philippines. So the original capital complex for the new possession of the Philippines was modeled after Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. was planned by Daniel Burnham. And the plan for Washington, D.C. that you see today is a result of the plan. Of course, there was an older plan, but Daniel Burnham and a couple of other guys redesigned Washington, D.C. in 1901. And in 1904, they applied almost the same template. So if you go to Washington, D.C. on your next summer vacation with your parents, please send me to Washington, D.C. Because Paulo Alcazar told me I have to go there. Sabihin niyo sa kanila. Wala pa atang siguro pero pwede na siguro. Anyway, Washington, D.C. was the same, almost the same width, right? But of course it was longer. And in Washington, D.C., there was supposed to be, they had the capital there, and it was fronting the river Potomac. In Manila's situation, the same width, but one-third the length, we were also supposed to have a national capital building. And William Parsons, who was the architect assigned by Daniel Burnham, who fleshed out the design, actually created the design for a national capital, which is a miniature version of the one in Washington, D.C. And he designed it in the 1910s, and it was supposed to be there. Because this, for those of you who are in architecture planning and landscape architecture, is an example of formal Baroque planning. You have very formal spaces which are organized around a central axis. So that central axis in Washington, D.C. is the national capital, top of the hill, and all the way down to the Washington Monument, yung mataas na obelisk, right? So, Daniel Burnham and William Parsons applied the same principles. We were supposed to build the national capital over there, and they did the design. If we had built the design in 1910, it would only cost 10 million pesos.
yung camera mo.
Right? Mura. Pwede mong i-Gcash yan ngayon. Pero they ran out of money, they were not able to build it. So they focused instead on what? The other side, which is the terminus, the monument. Now our monument was supposed to be a much larger monument than
Ayan
this.
sa camera.
So in 1905, there was a competition, which was an international competition to design the monument. Right? There were 40 entries from all over the world. There was another competition, and the one who won, which was one of Bill, created a pilot ship. Ito yung Rizal, no? Sorry, because we don't have...
Doon na tayong kasunod.
They put a steam and aluminum tower over it. to modernize it. And for those of you young enough to remember, a lot of people got mad and said that is compromising the original structure. So overnight it was taken off, and that structure for about 2 decades was the landmark between Manila and Pasay City until about 70s, I'm sorry, way before your time. So that's why you have that. So a lot of people think that was the damage from World War II. It's not. It's really from the damage of ill-advised modernism, right? So in fact, all of this area, so what happened to the American plan? The American plan was supposed to have a national capital surrounded by several buildings on both sides. This was not intended to be the central part of Manila. In Burnham's plan, studied, I'm sure some of you have, there were 4 areas identified as parks, each one about 30 to 50 hectares, the total area of which would have given Manila a park the size of Central Park in New York City. So Rizal Park was not meant as a Central Park, it was meant as a civic center. So all of the buildings of government would have been on either side, and at the back of the Capitol that Burnham and Parsons designed were supposed to be 5 buildings of the major departments of the government: agriculture, finance, national defense, national resources. I forget what the other one because I'm senior now. Anyway, only 2 of those buildings were built. The Agrifina, what we know as Agrifina, is agriculture and finance buildings, which eventually became now it was the National Museum and the Department of Tourism. Of course, now the tourism left, and that's now all National Museum. So the original intent was for Manila to have a central civic space where anyone who had concerns about the city or had any services they wanted from government could go to one singular place where government officials could provide the services to all of these people. Of course, they never built it. Only agriculture and finance. Eventually, even the capital was not built. They used what was supposed to be the library. Library. So yung library na yan, yung National Museum, the National Museum on Ibolgos was originally designed as a national library. Juan Arellano and Tomas Mapua retrofitted it to become the legislature in this
Hawakan muna rito.
the pre-war and post-war period until
Hawakan dyan.
Patasang Pambansa, which is another walking tour, but we will die if we take that walking tour. Anyway, so, hindi natupad yung original plan ni Daniel Burnham, hindi rin natupad yung sa Quezon City. That is why today, Philippines has no central place to go to. We don't have a central place, but unlike Washington DC and other countries in the world, where you could go in one stop to all of the departments. So what the Philippine government is doing to us, we want to express our displeasure with them, is we have to spend a lot of money to go to Batasan, Pambansa, and Quezon City, lose 2 hours to go to GSI, that's where the Senate is, and then try to get to Malacanang, which is the secretary. So it's split into 3 different areas. They don't want to talk to each other. They don't want us to reach them. And that is why, in my opinion, the Philippine government has made this protocol. But to understand that that is the way, if we do not follow the plans of good advice planners and architects plans, if we don't follow the plans, then we fail. Because we fail to provide the facilities that should be of service to everyone. Okay, so we will, the reason I'm doing this is because mainit sa harap ng monumento, but we will give you a few minutes to your selfies or TikToks there. But before we let you do that, we'll give you 10 minutes to do your TikTok, and then we will cross to the other side, and where I will give the next series of explanation. Hopefully, all of you will be alive crossing this. Okay? So just before we go, please note, yung flagpole na yan, no?
Ay, doon daw po yung monumento muna.
Doon sa may kalabaw.
Ay, kalabaw daw.
Hindi, ano ba yung sa mapa?
Ang next is...
Ano ba yung nasa mapa?
Noligarden.
Dito. Oh, halika na. Halika na. Mauna na tayo dun. Bukas yung ano.
Ba't may bag ako?
Oh, kuha kami. Kita. Ito video. Pakihawakan.
Ay, gano'n.
Tira kita.
Hindi sila lang. Video, picture mo sila. Mainit. Kahit hindi sila gumagalaw yun.
Dito ka lang gumagalaw yan.